So Brett Baer of Fox News decided to do an interview with Trump here. Now, it's interesting that Trump agreed to do the interview. It is. Because, look, keep it real. Normally, he avoids tough interviews. It's the truth. Remember when he ditched a Republican debate because Megyn Kelly was hosting it? And he says, well, Megyn Kelly's very unfair to me. She's very unfair, so I'm not going to do it. And his people view that as like, oh, look how macho he is. But in reality, it's the opposite. He's scared of even slightly difficult questions. He wants softballs down the center of the plate all day long. Now, that's not unique to him. DeSantis is the same way. Many people are the same way. Biden doesn't want to do any debates, right? But here we have an instance where Brett Baer does his job, and it does not make Trump look good. So I got a bunch of videos here for you. Let's dive into them.
In 2016, you said that. I'm going to surround myself with only the best and most serious people.
Well, I did do that, and we had tremendous, look, we had the best economy we've ever had, the world has ever seen.
Your Vice President, Mike Pence, is running against you.
Yeah.
Your Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, she's running against you. Your former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said he's not supporting you. You mentioned National Security Advisor John Bolton. He's not supporting you either. You mentioned Attorney General Bill Barr, says you shouldn't be president again, calls you the consummate narcissist and troubled man. You recently called Barr a gutless pig. Your second Defense Secretary is not supporting you, called you irresponsible. This week, you and your White House called your White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, weak and ineffective and born with a very small brain. You called your acting White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, a born loser. You called your first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, dumb as a rock, and your first Defense Secretary, James Mattis, the world's most overrated general. You called your White House Press Secretary, Kayleigh Canadian, milquetoast, and multiple times you've referred to your Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao, as Mitch McConnell's China-loving wife. So, why did you hire all of them in the first place?
Because I hired 10 to 1 that were fantastic. We had a great economy. We had phenomenal people in charge of the economy. We had phenomenal people in the military. I'm not a fan of Milley, and I'm not a fan of certain of the television people. But I knocked out ISIS. I defeated ISIS. They said, Mattis, it would take 3 years, and I don't think we can do it. I did it in a period of like 4 weeks.
There's a lot of people who praise you for your policies. I just said that.
That's true. Well, I mean, you just went through a list. But don't forget, for every one you say, I had 10 that love us.
So look, man, like Brett Baer is spitting facts there. He's telling the truth. But honestly, to these people, it won't matter. Why? Because they'd spin everything, not just as being neutral, but as a positive. So say, look, the reason why, he fired all those people is because they were representatives of the establishment, and Trump was trying to purge the establishment, and he was trying to drain the swamp. And so, yeah, he made some bad decisions early on, but he got rid of them when he realized these are establishment hacks and shills, and he's representing the average person, and they're not. So they're going to spin it no matter what. And look, he didn't go with that argument. He went with the argument of like, for every one bad person, there were 10 great ones. But they're always going to find a way to wiggle out of it. They're always going to find a way to be little weasels and say, well, that's not a legitimate criticism, because there are no legitimate criticisms. None of these criticisms are ever legitimate, ever. So he's doing his job, but Trump is still being incredibly slimy here. Now, by the way, I will say, I hate all those people that were mentioned there. But the fact of the matter is, Trump has a track record his entire life of having relationships sour with people. Why? Because at some point, he stabs them in the back and twists the knife. I mean, this is why when he had his casinos built and his hotels built, he hired all these construction people and electric people, etc. And you know what happened, right? He stiffed them. He didn't pay them. And there were a lot of lawsuits. So his loyalty goes one way. His loyalty is only to himself. And these guys noticed that. These guys realized that. And by the way, just to be clear, even like the souring with John Bolton type thing, it's not like Trump was anti-war and John Bolton is pro-war, and that's why the relationship didn't work out. No, they're both pro-war, as the record shows.
What do you say to that female independent suburban voter who feels that way, to win her back?
First of all, I won in 2020 by a lot, okay? Let's get that straight. I won in 2020.
This guy is kryptonite to female suburban voters. This guy is kryptonite to independent and moderate and centrist voters and swing voters. And this is evidence of it right here. This is like the one thing you can't say to respond to this question, and that's what you did. Let's listen again.
What do you say to that female independent suburban voter who feels that way, to win her back?
First of all, I won in 2020 by a lot, okay? Let's get that straight. I won in 2020.
You know that
and if you look at all of the tapes, if you look at everything that you want to look at, you take a look at Truth to Vote, where they have people stuffing the ballot boxes on tapes, or
Mr. President,
let's go to recent. Well, wait a minute. Let's go to recent. FBI Twitter. Let's go to recent. The 51 agents, all corrupt stuff, Brett.
Understand about the Hunter Biden,
no, but
all
that's cheating
fair
on the
things.
election.
But
that's cheating on the election.
You lost the 2020 election.
Brett, you take a look at all of the stuffed ballots. You take a look at all of the things, including things like the 51 intelligence agents.
There were recounts in all of the swing states. There was not significant widespread
We're trying
fraud.
to get recounts, real recounts, not just
investigations,
numbers of votes
widespread
cast.
corruption. There was not a sense of that. There were lawsuits, more than 50 of them, by your lawyers, some in front of
Brett,
judges that you appointed.
Look at Wisconsin.
That came out with no evidence.
Wisconsin has practically admitted it was rigged.
Yeah.
Other states are doing the same right now, and it's continuing.
There have been
It was
reviews
a
of
rigged
every
election.
potential case of voter fraud in 6 battleground states, and they found fewer than 475 cases.
You know why? Because they didn't look at the right things.
Okay,
Brett.
are you going
they
to
were
be
counting? They were counting ballots, not the authenticity of the ballot. The ballots were fake ballots. You had this was a very rigged
Are you
election.
going to go? This is how you're going to tell that independent suburban woman voter
No,
to vote for
we're
you?
off to winning an election, and I think we're winning very well. I got a poll just recently. I have it here.
No, I know, and I watched the numbers.
So look, Brett Baier is the most aggressive I've ever seen anybody with Trump. When Trump goes off on his tangent about how he won the election, he goes, no, you didn't win the election. There were over 50 lawsuits. This was exhaustively researched. They found fewer than 475 cases of election fraud. And by the way, Biden won by 7 million votes. 475, 7 million. And by the way, of those 475, they weren't all pro-Biden. They weren't all pro-Biden of the 475 examples of actual voter fraud or election fraud or whatever you want to call it. So he's trying to hold him accountable. He's doing his best. But you know what? One of the hallmarks of a conspiracy theory is what? Evidence disproving it is spun as evidence for it. And that's exactly what we saw right there. When you bring up it's actually not 50 cases, it's over 60 cases. Yeah, but that's just further evidence that the establishment was trying to steal it from me. That's all that is. Were there recounts that didn't cut in my direction? Well, that's because we didn't get a real recount. Because the recount was just as rigged as the election. So in other words, it is impossible to disprove it. He believes it as a matter of axiomatic truth. It is a matter of principle in his mind. I won the election. So there is no talking him out of it. There is no evidence or proof that sways him in the other direction. Now, by the way, with Trump, I have no idea if he's just convinced himself that this is actually the case, or if he's just lying. I don't know. We'll never know, right? He may have talked himself into believing all this garbage, but it's not true. It's not even close to true. I got more for you.
But I focused on nonviolent crime. As an example, a woman who you know very well was in jail. She had 24 more years to serve. She served for 22 years. She had 20.
Alice Johnson.
Alice.
She was in the Super Bowl.
High quality. Oh, yeah. I said, how many years? And she was on a telephone call, and they were involved in selling marijuana, mostly marijuana. And she got like 50 years in jail.
But she'd be killed under your plan.
Huh?
As a drug dealer.
No. Under that? It would depend on the severity. It would depend on the severity.
She's technically a former drug dealer. She had multi-million-dollar cocaine ring.
Any drug dealer, look.
So even Alice Johnson in that ad.
She can't do it, okay? By the way, if that was there, no, she wouldn't be killed. It would start as of now, so you wouldn't go to the past.
I know, but your policy.
No, starting now, yeah.
All right, so let me break this down for everybody, because this is hilarious, okay? One of the best things Donald Trump did was pardon Alice Johnson, this sweet, grandmotherly, elderly black lady who didn't even realize it, but she happened to be involved in a drug deal. She was sort of like a pawn in the whole situation. Kim Kardashian, to her credit, brought this case to Trump, gave him all the information, all the details. You know, maybe, I don't even know, she may have introduced him to Alice Johnson, and she basically lobbied on her behalf. and said, look, this is crazy. She basically has a life sentence, and she didn't really do anything wrong. Totally nonviolent. You know, this is a travesty and a tragedy. And we need to put an end to this. You need to pardon her sentence or commute her sentence. So Trump, to his credit, listens to the outcry and goes, you know what? I think you're right. I think we should let her go. And he does exactly that. Listen, again, no wittiness, no twist in the story, no nothing. I'm here to tell you, credit on that. I gave him credit at the time. I'm giving him credit now. And then he ran a Super Bowl ad about freeing her. That was based. Everything's wonderful to this point. But, what does he do? As he's been campaigning recently, he goes out there and says, regularly, during his rallies, we need to do the death penalty for drug dealers. I go to China, I talk to Xi, and she says, we have no drug problem, no drug problem. Why? Oh, we killed them. And Trump brings this up and says, we need to do this here. We should execute drug dealers. Well, guess what? By that logic, this poor, sweet, grandmotherly lady would be killed under the policy you're proposing. So now when that's brought up to him, he's like, see, what happened was, me and Craig and them was down by the Safeway and the sun was in his eyes, and that's why the stuff in the thing and whatever, bro. It's not even like that and stuff, whatever. You haven't thought this through, Don? This hasn't occurred to you? And so he's caught like a deer in headlights, and he has, it depends on the severity of the thing. And then he goes on to say, well, also the policy would start from like now, so it wouldn't be retroactive. So, but what? The next Alice Johnson, the next person in an exact situation like that will be put to death? He's so stupid. Guys, look, here's the most important point here in this conversation. This is what happens when you have no real ideological concerns. You have no actual philosophy. You're just like wafting in the wind, and wherever, you sense a little bit more pressure is the direction you're going to go in. And so if that happens to be insane fundamentalist Christians who want to bring back a theocracy, he'll be like, base, let's do a theocracy. They make some pretty good points. Right? And so advocating for killing drug dealers when he freed this poor woman who was a drug dealer who shouldn't have even been locked up in the first place. And he's caught red-handed on this. He's a dangerous man to have in office. I would almost rather have somebody with an actual ideology, even if in ways I disagree with it, because at least there's a logic to what they do. He's just a wild card. You never know what the hell he's going to do. Went from freeing some drug dealers saying, let's kill drug dealers as a matter of policy, do the death penalty. By the way, the death penalty for dealing drugs is deeply unconstitutional. 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, protection from cruel and unusual punishment. The Supreme Court has ruled the only crime that somebody can be put to death for in the U.S. is murder. He's like, let's just kill drug dealers. Insane, insane, insane. All right, final one for everybody.
So said that I've never heard you talk about how the incredible job you did with the vaccines, because as you know, I got them done in 9 months, and it was supposed to take anywhere from 5 to 12 years. I broke their ass, okay? And
oh, that's funny. Somebody clip that out.
I broke their ass, okay? And you know who doesn't like me too much? The FDA, because they were very bureaucratic, and I got it done. And he said, you may have saved in the world, throughout the world, 100 million people, and you never talk about it. I said, I really don't want to talk about it, because as a Republican, it's not a great thing to talk about, because for some reason, it's just not.
For some reason?
Oh, this is great. This is great. I love this.
Talk about it, because as a Republican, it's not a great thing to talk about, because for some reason, it's just not.
For some reason?
Yeah, for some reason, because people love the vaccines and people hate the vaccines, but conservatives aren't. And I understand both sides of it, by the way. I understand both sides very well. What I didn't do is the mandates. The mandates and the vaccines don't go.
He won't just come out and say it, but he knows it. In his mind, he's like, look, man, the far-right base is absolutely psychotic on these vaccines, dog. They are anti-vaccine. They think it's a plot. They think it's a scam. They don't think it saved any lives. They think we're poisoning people on purpose. God damn, these motherfuckers are crazy, bro. That's the subtext. That's what's going on in his head. He's like, but as a Republican, you're not supposed to say these things for some reason. For some reason, you're not supposed to say it. You're right, Don. You're not. You're not. But look, it's a shame. I wish he would lead into it as much as possible that he did the vaccines and that it was a good thing. That's another rare instance where you give him credit, right? He was actually right to cut the red tape, try to rush it through, and he did save a lot of lives. I don't know if it was 100 million. I don't know if it's 100 million, but it's a lot of lives that were saved by those vaccines. Of course, the biggest problem was the patent sharking on it. That was the biggest problem, is that we didn't have cheap vaccines that were generics that were allowed in many developing countries because the pharmaceutical companies were like, no, we care more about profit than saving lives. So not nearly as many people got the vaccine as should have gotten the vaccine as a direct result of corporate greed. That's the biggest problem, but it's always interesting hearing him try to like tap dance around the issue because he doesn't want to piss off his base. But look, where he settled was like, look, I'm anti-mandate, but I'm actually pro-vaccine. Fair enough. But, it'd be nice if he had more of a backbone in telling his own base they're wrong on the vaccine. He still backs off just a little bit because he doesn't want to make them angry. But look, cue the Alex Jones types now going in on Trump again. Every time Trump brings up the vaccine, Alex Jones is pissed off at him. All right, so there you have it. Look, interesting interview. Bret Baier did a decent job trying to hold Trump accountable. And look, we'll talk about it at a different time, but numbers that are coming in now on Trump starting to get interesting and maybe not in the way you think. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.